In a land of ancient hills and dirt roads, where silence felt like a permanent guest, lived a man with a restless, adventurous heart. Ever since he was a boy, he'd explored the caves that dotted the landscape, these deep scars carved into the earth long before roads, machines, or explosions ever existed. For him, this wasn't just a hobby. It was a connection to something ancient, a quiet respect for nature and time itself. But things were changing. Mining operations were advancing, and one by one, the caves he knew began to disappear. Some were destroyed without ever being explored, blasted apart, buried and wiped off the map as if they had never been. With each demolition, he felt a piece of history was being lost. Without a witness, without a memory, it bothered him more than he let on. That day, driven by this quiet urgency, he decided to visit a small, isolated cave. One of those slated for destruction. He thought it would be just another quick visit, another routine trip. He'd done this countless times and knew the terrain like the back of his hand. It was just a brief entry, a few moments of observation, and then back home. Nothing more. He brought his 5-year-old son with him, his little partner in these small adventures. The boy already knew the ritual. Go, look, and come back. At home, his wife, 8 months pregnant, waited for their return, just like always. This trip felt no different from the countless others that had ended safely. Father and son rode their motorcycle down their empty roads, the wind and silence rushing past them until they reached the isolated cave. The scenery was majestic, yet serene, as if the space held ancient secrets, waiting for one last glance before vanishing forever. Nothing hinted at danger, nothing suggested urgency, yet there was an unspoken tension in that silence, a feeling that offered no comfort and no warning. Everything seemed like just another ordinary chapter in a life that, until that day, had always turned out fine. The man was 30 years old, and right at the entrance of the cave, what appeared was a wide, deep, impressive main opening, like a stone mouth gaping open into the mountain. Just a few steps inside were enough to realize it was not an ordinary hole. The outside light still reached part of the initial chamber, revealing rough stone walls and a space so vast it seemed excessive to exist there, hidden away. The environment had the kind of grandeur that makes anyone lower their voice without noticing, as if the place itself demanded respect. On the ceiling, enormous structures had formed over thousands of years. Some descended slowly, drop by drop, millennium after millennium. Stalactites. Others grew upward from the ground, as if responding to an invisible call. Stalagmites in some places. These forms met and became a single column, massive, majestic, almost monumental. It didn't just seem beautiful, it seemed too ancient to be touched, like a kind of masterpiece that cannot be repeated, made at a rhythm humans don't understand, and that mining would erase in seconds. The man stood there for a few moments, looking around, not in a hurry, but attentively, like someone who had learned that nature rarely shows its best at first glance. As he observed the main chamber, he scanned the environment, searching for details that would escape an ordinary visitor. And that was when he noticed something most people would miss. An extremely narrow passage, almost hidden among the rocks, a tight crevice that opened discreetly along the side of the cave as if it were an entrance reserved only for those who were truly looking. He approached and quickly assessed it. Entering through the main chamber would mean following a more obvious, wider path, but also a longer one. It would require time to go in and time to come back. The crevice, on the other hand, seemed to lead to an alternative route, possibly a shorter one, and that was exactly what he wanted that day. To go in see what he needed to see, and return quickly, as if the visit could fit into an ordinary routine. He decided to go that way. He lit his lantern, approached the narrow passage, and bent down to pass through. Before entering, he turned to his son and asked him to wait exactly there, near the entrance. He said it would be quick, that he would be right back. The boy, confident and used to this routine, stayed there, playing and watching as his father slowly disappeared through the small opening in the rock, until only the flickering light of the lantern could be seen moving away. As he passed through the crevice, the man was surprised. The entrance was tight and required care, but soon after, the space opened up. Inside, there was enough height to walk with relative ease. The environment was silent, and the only light came from the lantern, casting long, irregular, living shadows that made the walls seem to move. Each step changed the shapes around him. He moved forward calmly, exploring, entering one chamber after another, as if the cave were organized into successive rooms. In some places, rock formations jutted down from the ceiling with visibly sharp points aimed toward the ground, creating a scene that was both beautiful and threatening, as if the cave itself were designed to impress and intimidate in equal measure. With each new space, the sense of grandeur increased. The place felt alive, ancient, as if it held stories no one would ever hear. And without realizing it, carried by admiration and curiosity and by the certainty that it would be quick, he went deeper and deeper into the cave, moving farther from the point where his son waited, without imagining that this simple choice was more than just a shortcut. It was the beginning of a chain of decisions that, from that moment on, he would no longer be able to control. The path split again to the right, a downward slope that seemed to descend into the mountain's core. To the left, a passage that appeared to ascend, perhaps leading back toward the surface. He chose the left, thinking it was the logical way out, but the more he walked, the more he felt the air change, becoming denser, colder. The path twisted and turned, and soon he no longer had any sense of direction. He stopped. The silence was now absolute. He called, "Ouchie," and only the echo of his own voice replied, distorted by the stone walls. The shortcut had become a maze. His quick visit was turning into a trap, and with every passing minute, the distance between him and his son grew, not just in meters, but in something far more terrifying. After crossing another wide, silent chamber, the man realized that the path ahead no longer continued on the same level. The passage ended at a large, slanted rock, too high to be overcome with a simple step. He stopped. He approached carefully and ran his hand over the surface, feeling the irregularity of the stone. There were damp spots, small ledges, areas worn smooth by time. To continue forward, he would have to climb. The lantern's light illuminated only what was immediately in front of him. Above head height, he found a small natural support in the rock, a place where he could set the lantern without it rolling. He stretched his arm carefully and placed it there, checking that the flame remained steady. Only then did he turn his attention to his own body. He needed a secure handhold. He ran his fingers along the rock until he found a small crack, narrow, fitting just over 4 fingers. He pressed into it, tested his weight. The stone held. That would have to be enough. He took a deep breath and began to lift his body. First one leg, then the other. The effort tensed his muscles as he clung to the rock. Midway through the movement, he extended his free arm forward, trying to reach a better hold, something that would give him more stability. It was an instinctive gesture, too quick to be calculated. His elbow brushed the lantern. The sound was sharp. The lantern fell. He heard the impact before feeling anything else. The glass shattered as it hit the stone below. The flame tried to survive for a second, but the dampness of the ground quickly won. The fire went out. The last flicker vanished, and darkness took over everything at once. It was not a slow transition. It was immediate. He froze, his body still suspended, unable to see anything at all. There was no distant glow, no shadow, no difference between near and far, only darkness. The silence felt heavier, almost tangible. The air denser. The cave, which had previously revealed itself gradually under the lantern's light, was now just an unknown space around him. Instinctively, he tried to move back, but stopped immediately. He knew that if he descended, he would step where the lantern had shattered. Glass scattered across the floor, invisible. One wrong step could deeply cut his feet. There, hanging against the rock, he understood that going back was not safe. Moving forward was the only possible option. He tightened his grip on the crack and continued climbing in the dark. Every movement became slow and deliberate. He felt the stone before trusting it with his weight. He searched with his feet, his hands, his forearms. He climbed centimeter by centimeter, not knowing exactly how far he had left to go. The effort felt greater without any sense of space, and time seemed to stretch. After a long blind ascent, he felt the incline lessen. He reached his hand forward and found a flat surface. Lying on the cold stone, a 30-year-old man remained motionless, not out of calm, but because he needed to feel where he was. In the absolute darkness of the cave, he ran his hand over the rock, feeling the empty drop just ahead. His lantern was shattered, and with it, any sense of direction. He tried to retrace his steps mentally, but every memory was a blur of similar walls and passages. He remembered seeing other crevices along the way, forks in the path he'd ignored. Now, they were a terrifying thought. One wrong turn on the way back could lead him deeper into the unknown with no return. The true weight of isolation settled in. It wasn't just the darkness. It was being without reference, without room for error. He made the hardest choice, not to move. Not out of surrender, but strategy. Someone would notice he was gone. Someone would come. Lying there, he chose to trust time and hope. He was just 30 years old, lying motionless on the cold stone of the cave. The dampness seeped into his bones, and with no light, time itself seemed to disappear. His mind jumped from rational thoughts to images of fear. He thought of his son, waiting alone outside, too young to grasp the danger. He thought of his pregnant wife at home, and the daughter he might never meet. Trapped, with no way forward or back, all he had left was trust. It was then that he prayed, not just for himself, but for his family. He asked God to send an angel to his son, to care for his wife and unborn child. He placed his life in God's hands. After the prayer, a sense of peace washed over him. The darkness was still absolute, the cold just as biting, but despair no longer had a hold on him. After the prayer, he did not move. He remained lying in exactly the same position, as if any adjustment might break the fragile balance he had found. Silence filled the space again, but it was no longer the same silence as before. It was slower, heavier, stretching. Along with time, there were no more decisions to make. Only waiting remained. The cold imposed itself gradually, first in his feet, then his legs, climbing slowly up his back. The dampness seeped through his clothes and seemed to settle deep into his bones. He tried to shift slightly, but quickly gave up. Every movement demanded a monumental effort and brought no relief. His muscles began to stiffen. as if his body were preparing to stay there for a very, very long chimi. Without light, time lost all reference. There was no way to know whether it was still day or if night had already fallen outside. He tried counting his breaths, but soon lost track. He tried measuring time through his thoughts, but they began to repeat themselves, a looping cycle in the dark. Minutes and hours felt identical. At times, he forced himself to keep his eyes open, even though it made no difference. He feared falling asleep and not waking up. At other moments, exhaustion took over without asking permission. His body would shut down for brief moments, only to be jolted awake again by the biting cold, the dull pain, or the growing, relentless thirst. Sleep came only in fragments, never whole. His throat began to burn. His mouth was completely dry. He ran his tongue over his cracked lips and felt an urgent, desperate need for water. That was when he noticed something different. From the nearby walls, moisture was slowly dripping, forming thin streams running down the rock. He carefully moved his face closer and let the cool water touch his lips. He tasted it cautiously. The flavor was mild, almost sweet. It didn't seem contaminated. He drank slowly, without haste, as if every single drop needed to last. It brought some relief. Not enough to erase the discomfort, but just enough to keep going. To trick his hunger, he tried to sleep again. He slept, he woke, he slept again. He was lost in his own rhythm, with no way of knowing how much time had passed, without knowing if anyone was already searching for him, or if his absence had even been noticed yet. Meanwhile, outside, time moved to a different rhythm entirely. His young son remained near the cave entrance, entertained with sticks on the ground, drawing little lines in the dirt, completely unaware of the true gravity of the situation. To him, his father had entered the cave and would, at some point, simply come back out. The world continued on in its quiet way, unaware that just a few meters away, a man lay motionless in the dark, fighting not against the cave, but against his own body, sustained only by faith, hope, and waiting. A young boy plays with sticks outside a cave, while his father explores inside. For him, time moves differently, filled with the simple silence of nature. Nothing feels wrong, nothing suggests danger, until a faint sound echoes from the narrow crevice his father entered. The boy freezes, listening. The sound comes again, clearer this time. A voice. His father's voice. It's not a scream, not panic, but there's urgency. He hears his father say he's fine, but lost. He asks his son to go find someone. Kangridu that the boy doesn't answer. He just nods toward the dark opening, understanding his mission. He stands, turns, and walks back the way they came. He reaches a fork in the road. One path goes up, the other down. He remembers his mother's joke. Going downhill, even a saint helps. Without hesitation, he chooses the downhill path and walks on, a silent messenger on a crucial task. With small but steady steps, the boy continued along the road. The path seemed to stretch on forever. The silence was profound, broken only by the wind and the sound of his own footsteps on the packed dirt. He walked without any rush or fear, each step just a natural continuation of the last. He didn't know how to measure distance or time. He just moved forward, driven by the need to do what his father had asked. After walking for miles, his body growing tired, he saw a simple house in the distance with a small roadside shop out front. It seemed almost impossible for such a place to exist on this isolated road. Without hesitating, he walked up and went inside. Behind the counter stood an older man, completely surprised to see such a small child arriving alone. Seemingly from nowhere, calmly, the boy approached and said his father was lost in a cave and needed help. At first, the man struggled to believe it. The story was just too big for such a small child. He stepped outside the shop and looked around, trying to figure out how the boy had gotten there. There were no cars, no motorcycles, no adults in sight, just the empty road, the wind, and the silence. It was unsettling. He decided to ask more questions. "How did you get here?" he asked. The boy's answer was simple: walking. He asked which direction he came from, and the boy pointed. The man knew this region well. He knew that in that direction were caves scheduled for destruction by a mining company, isolated, rarely visited places. The story started to make sense, as hard as it was to accept. He tried to gather more details. He asked for the boy's parents' names and his age. The boy answered what he could, but he didn't know his family's last name or their exact address. This didn't alarm the man. He was just a child. Looking for something more concrete, he asked about the father's job. The boy explained that his father grew vegetables and that a neighbor transported them in a truck. He gave the neighbor's name and mentioned the truck was blue. Actually, that moment something clicked. It was like a light turned on. The shopkeeper knew someone with that name who did exactly that kind of work and drove a blue truck. Without wasting another second, he picked up the phone and made a call. During the conversation, he described the boy. On the other end, the truck driver confirmed it. Everything pointed to this being his neighbor's son. He said he'd go to the family's house right away to be sure. A few minutes later, the phone rang again. The confirmation came along with a decision. He was on his way with the fire department. From that moment on, the story was no longer just a child's tale. It had become a race against time. When the firefighters arrived, the quiet shop was suddenly filled with hurried footsteps and the clatter of equipment. The owner repeated his story. The boy, the cave, the motorcycle, the direction he pointed. It was a long shot, but it was all they had. The crew boarded the truck, the little boy staring intently out the window. Farther ahead, he'd say at every turn. Some firefighters exchanged doubtful glances. Could a child this small have walked so far alone? Suddenly, the boy reacted, pointing firmly to an uphill path. A little farther on, they saw it, a cave, and parked right in front, a motorcycle. It was hell. The boy was telling the truth. The firefighters rushed into the main entrance, but the boy pulled the shop owner to a small, hidden crevice. He insisted this was the way his father went. The owner called inside, but only his own echo answered. The firefighters returned from the main cave with bad news. It ended in a deep 20-meter drop. The boy's words were lost in the urgency. Everyone assumed the worst. Night fell, and the pregnant mother arrived, her face etched with fear. As dawn broke, the rescue team prepared for a grim recovery. Everything pointed to a tragic end, but there was one small voice that had not yet been truly heard. Did you enjoy this testimony? Become a member of the Christian Wisdom Society and gain access to the final part of this episode. As a member, you will also receive access to a wide range of content, daily devotionals, stories to share with your children or grandchildren, and messages that strengthen your faith. By becoming a member, you help us continue spreading the Word of God and keep this work alive. Link in the profile.